Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dagenais. I'm one of the volunteer preview speakers for the Kansas City Lyric Opera Guild, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this short preview of The Flying Dutchman, the upcoming performance which begins March 2nd for the Lyric Opera of Kansas City. 2013 marks the 200th anniversary of the birth of two of opera's major composers, the great Italian Giuseppe Verdi and the German composer Richard Wagner. Now, last fall, the Lyric honored Verdi's bicentennial with a production of Il Trovatore, and this spring are doing Wagner's The Flying Dutchman. The story has the origins in an episode from Wagner's life in 1837 when Wagner was just 24. He was a theater director in a small town called Riga, but he and his young wife Minna concluded there was no future for them in Riga. They needed to be in a larger place. Unfortunately, they hadn't paid all their bills, and Wagner's creditors had seized his passport. Well, passport or no, they booked passage in the middle of the night on a vessel headed for Paris. Now, ordinarily, the trip from Paris would have taken 2 or 3 days, but they were beset by horrific storms which tossed the boat and turned the boat on the seas. As a matter of fact, one large wave even swept over the deck Minna's trunk, which had all of her worldly possessions. But they finally made it to Paris, and when there, Wagner decided to write an opera about a sea story. Now, he'd always been captivated by the legend of the Flying Dutchman. It was an old Dutch legend about a sea captain who had to round a difficult promontory during a storm and pledged that he would do it even if he had to sail for the rest of his life. Well, some evil spirit took him up on his bargain. He made it around the promontory, but he was condemned to sail the 7 seas forever. And meanwhile, he's been doing this for hundreds of years. All of his crew has died. The ship is staffed by ghosts, but he himself is still alive. And the terms of the curse were that once every 7 years he could go on shore to try to find a woman who would love him. And if he could find a woman who would love him forever, that would redeem him from this awful fate. Well, as luck would have it, he lands in a Norwegian port, and there's a lady named Senta who has, for years, known of this legend and pledged that if she ever came across the Flying Dutchman, she would be the one to redeem him from his fate. Well, I think you know the rest of the story of the Flying Dutchman. The interesting thing about the opera is that not only is it a great story and a great piece of music, but Wagner really created his compositional technique in this opera, which was to have different musical themes for each character and each idea in the opera, and then weave the entire musical fabric of this opera from those particular musical themes. The Flying Dutchman was the first great opera incorporating this idea, and foreshadows many of the great Wagnerian operas to come. For this production of The Flying Dutchman, the Lyric Opera has assembled an outstanding cast. The title role will be sung by Richard Paul Fink, a baritone who sang the title role in Verdi's Rigoletto a couple of years ago for the Lyric, and also was in Nixon in China this last year. He was Henry Kissinger. The role of Senta is sung by a young lady named Melissa Citro, who's making quite a reputation for Wagnerian roles around the country. The Norwegian ship captain Daland, Senta's father, is sung by Philip Cokorinos, a Metropolitan Opera baritone who's sung with the Met for many years in New York. And the role of Erik, the young man who was Senta's lover, but he's being cast aside for the Flying Dutchman, is sung by a tenor by the name of Pickle, all of them outstanding singers. So the Lyric Opera has not done this opera for 38 years. I'm looking forward to seeing the Flying Dutchman on stage, and I hope that you'll join me in seeing it there.